Tonight, our attention turns to Kyiv, where one of the most pressing questions of Europe's future is playing out: Ukraine's path to the European Union and the political storm now brewing inside the Union itself. At the annual Yalta European Strategy Conference, a gathering that has become a key forum for dialogue between Ukraine and its European partners, Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski took the stage with unusually sharp words. His comments laid bare the frustration building in European capitals over Hungary's repeated vetoes of Ukraine's bid to join the 27-member bloc. Since February 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion, Ukraine has staked its future on closer integration with the West. Just days after that invasion began, Kyiv submitted its application to join the European Union. It was both a symbolic act of defiance and a strategic choice, a declaration that Ukraine belongs in Europe, that its sacrifices are not in vain, and that its destiny lies inside the European family of nations. And yet, more than 3 years later, negotiations remain blocked, not because of Ukraine's lack of effort, but because of the objections of one EU member state, Hungary. Led by Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, Hungary has accused Ukraine of discriminating against its Hungarian minority living in the Zakarpattia region. While this concern has been raised in EU discussions before, Sikorski argued that Orbán has gone far beyond what is reasonable. As you hinted, Sikorski said, one member state vetoed the actual start of negotiations for a very particular bilateral issue. Hungary is of the view that Ukraine discriminates against the Hungarian minority. His words echoed through the chamber, pointing directly at Budapest without hesitation. But he did not stop there. Sikorski sharpened his message, declaring, "We think, of course, that you can blackmail all of the EU with your bilateral issue, but there are limits. And in our view, Hungary has gone beyond what is reasonable." It was an extraordinary rebuke from a Polish foreign minister aimed at a fellow Central European nation. The message was clear. Hungary's use of the veto is no longer seen as protecting minority rights, but as outright blackmail, undermining the unity and credibility of the European Union at a time of war. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister for European Integration, Taras Kachka, took the floor after Sikorski. His words were firm but measured, a reflection of Kyiv's strategy to show readiness, discipline and patience in the face of political obstacles. "No one is actually giving us any shortcuts," Kachka said. "We will do everything from A to Z or whatever is required from us, but there is a will not to be stuck like some other candidate countries being blocked by their neighbours." Kachka's point was crucial. Ukraine does not want to become another frozen candidate like Turkey or North Macedonia before it, trapped in limbo by political disputes rather than technical criteria. For Kyiv, the war has made EU membership not just a long-term goal, but an existential necessity, he went on. "Meanwhile, we maintain our dialogue with Hungary. We are not giving up on them, even if, despite their public statements about our future in the European Union." The Deputy Prime Minister was sending a clear message: Ukraine will fulfill its obligations, engage in dialogue, and not provide Budapest with an excuse to block its progress. Still, the uncertainty remains. "I hope that we will get feedback soon," Kachka continued, "and it will be clear whether we have the Hungarian government on board, engaging with us bilaterally and in the institution, or it will be their decision to come back after the elections. Then we will adjust our work." These remarks reflect a pragmatic understanding in Kyiv. Hungary may be playing for time, waiting until after its domestic elections to decide how far it can continue its obstruction without isolating itself completely inside the EU. For Ukraine, the stakes could not be higher. EU accession is more than a bureaucratic process. It is about survival, legitimacy, and belonging. The war with Russia has devastated Ukraine's economy, displaced millions, and forced a massive restructuring of its political system. Integration with the European Union offers not only financial assistance and market access, but also the promise of security, a symbolic guarantee that Ukraine will never again stand alone. For Europe, too, this is a test of credibility. Enlargement has always been a complicated process, but the urgency of Ukraine's candidacy is unlike any seen before. If one member state can indefinitely hold hostage the application of a nation fighting for its very existence, the EU risks sending a message of weakness to Moscow, to Kyiv, and to the world. The Hungarian factor complicates more than just Ukraine's bid. Viktor Orbán has long cultivated close ties with Russia. He has resisted some of the toughest sanctions packages, delayed EU efforts on energy policy, and regularly clashed with Brussels over rule of law issues. Critics say his veto on Ukraine is part of a wider strategy to extract concessions from the EU on unrelated disputes, from frozen EU funds to migration policy. In this light, Poland's accusation of blackmail was more than rhetoric. It was a direct challenge to the way Orbán has wielded his veto power for political leverage. The broader history of EU enlargement shows the risks Ukraine faces. North Macedonia, for example, was blocked for decades due to a dispute with Greece over its name. Turkey's candidacy has been stalled for years amid political disagreements. The lesson is clear. Once a candidate country becomes stuck, it is hard to regain momentum. Ukraine insists it cannot afford such a fate. The path forward will require intense diplomacy. Kyiv will continue implementing reforms on anti-corruption, judicial independence and transparency. Poland, backed by other allies, will push Brussels to limit the ability of one country to stall the entire process. And Hungary, under pressure from within and without, will eventually have to decide whether its obstruction is sustainable. This confrontation is more than a dispute between member states. It is a test of Europe's ability to rise above narrow interests in the face of war. If the European Union cannot move forward on Ukraine, it risks signalling paralysis at a moment when unity is its greatest weapon against Russian aggression. Poland has thrown down the gauntlet, accusing Hungary of blackmail. Ukraine has promised to do everything from A to Z to meet the criteria. And Hungary now faces a choice: stand with Europe or risk standing alone. As the war grinds on and the stakes rise, that choice will shape not just Ukraine's future, but the future of the European Union itself.
As you hinted, one member state vetoed actual start of negotiations for a very particular bilateral issue. Hungary is of the view that Ukraine discriminates the Hungarian minority in... and we think, sure, you can blackmail all of the EU with your bilateral issue, but there are limits. And in our view, Hungary has gone beyond what's reasonable.
Based, no one is actually giving us any shortcuts. We will do everything from A to Z or what is required from us. But there is a will not to be stuck like some other candidate countries into being blocked by neighbors. Yeah, so that's, and as well, meanwhile, we maintain our dialogue with Hungary. We are not giving up on them, even if, despite their public statements about our future in the European Union. So that's why I hope that we will get a feedback soon, and it will be clear whether we have Hungarian government on board engaging with us bilaterally and in the institution, or it will be their decision to come back after elections. Then we will calibrate the work as well. But I hope